Level up your LA Kings experience with the new Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access. Enjoy great seats to the game along with premier dining inside the Lexus Club with all-you-can-eat food and non-alcoholic beverages. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings item and parking with your purchase. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn rewards on each purchase from the only ticket company that rewards you for buying. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings.
You're listening to an LA Kings podcast. For more episodes of this and every other Kings program, visit lakings.com/podcast.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
Welcome back, Kings fans. My name is Jesse Cohen. This is All the Kings Men. We're going to get to King of the Week in a second, but first, I want to tell you about Channel 67. It's a new podcast we launched this year. We've got 3 episodes out. And the most recent episode is one that I really want people to listen to. Just like in 2012, or 2022, I should say. This summer, the Kings invited the members of the 2014 Stanley Cup winning team to celebrate the anniversary of that win. A production team, including myself, was allowed to attend. We were able to interview a number of the players and coaches. And so the most recent episode of Channel 67 is that trip down memory lane. It's episode 1. It's a 2-parter. Episode 1 deals with the series against the Sharks and the Ducks. I'm going to play a little sample of it for you here. If you want to hear the rest of the episode, you'll have to find it on Channel 67. You can find Channel 67 at lakings.com/podcast or wherever fine podcasts are curated. Hope you enjoy the clip. Hope you go and find the rest of the episode. Here is an excerpt from part 1 of our look back at the 2014 Stanley Cup win on Channel 67. There's no better way to tell this story than to hear from the team that actually won the Cup. And we'll start with 3 of the most important and familiar names on the team. Conn Smythe winner Justin Williams, former captain Dustin Brown, and current captain Anze Kopitar.
The runs couldn't have been any different. They really couldn't have. And I'm not going to say 2012 was easy, because it wasn't. But the way we played made it seem easy. And I think really in maybe 2014 we were kind of getting punished for that. And, we just had kind of a will that we couldn't be knocked away and we couldn't be put down. And, we got hit in the face many times and knocked down, but we just kept getting back up. And that was really what 2014 was all about, is getting hit and coming back and still standing on our feet.
Experiencing 2012 and then 14, growing up as a kid, I always imagined it'd be more like 14, if that makes sense. Like every series, the very first series, we're down 3-0. So it was like battle. But it was like, it wasn't any easier than the first one. It's just, the journey was just a little bit longer. The grind, the pressure was a lot more. Because I don't think we ever really had a stranglehold of any. I guess Chicago, we were up 3-1. But like it was just a completely different experience. It felt like a completely different playoff.
Well, I think it's impressive, I guess, in both ways, right? Coming out to a 3-0 lead in every series, it's very obviously dominant performance. And then if you look at on the backside of things in 14, winning 3 Game 7s on the road, it's saying a lot of character, a lot of domination from the team in when it mattered most.
Defenseman Alec Martinez scored 2 of the most memorable goals in franchise history. We'll get to those in Chapter 2, but he reflected on the experience the team gained in 2012 and the difficulty that the early rounds of the 2014 playoffs gave the LA Kings.
I guess after 12, we're kind of sitting there and we're like, wow, well, we obviously got the experience of winning a Stanley Cup, but did we really get that experience? Because it's, we weren't playing in those Game 7s. We weren't, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, like our back against the wall. It was very different playing 3 Game 7s and winning those all on the road. It was a very different experience. And, back then it was, really difficult just to get out of the state of California, obviously, with San Jose and Anaheim and us just kind of battling.
Before we get into the dramatic battle of the first round matchup between the Sharks and Kings, I want to go back to the regular season and provide some context that frankly I had either never known or had totally forgotten. It's said that winning fixes everything, but for a 23-game stretch during the 2013-14 season, the LA Kings led the National Hockey League in losses with 14, and they had the lowest points percentage from December 20th, 2013 to the Olympic break in early February of 2014. Dustin Brown, Anze Kopitar, Justin Williams, and former coach John Stevens spoke about the difference between the regular season and the playoffs and how the team was built to withstand the challenges of both.
My experience as a King is I played 18 seasons or whatever it was. We didn't have one season where we played well in the regular season. However, this group, this little era that we had here, we were built for the playoffs. We knew that internally, like we could get to the playoffs, we can have a chance. We never made it easy on ourselves in the regular season with our play and how we performed consistently night after night. But once the real hockey began, we always found a way to be there.
Oh, I just think the makeup of the team, really. I think we're built for the playoffs and the grind, and you can't really necessarily grind 82 games, and we all knew, I guess the experience from 12th that you just got to make it in, and then, you turn the page and you start writing a new story.
The good thing is about, having a core of a team and having a lot of guys that were there in 2012, that you can do it. You know what you're capable of, but, the problem is you got to get in every year, and there's more, but there's 30 teams in the league, I believe, back then. But there's a lot of teams in the NHL that make the playoffs that don't make the playoffs that are really, really good teams. So obviously very important about getting in. You got to get in to give yourself a chance, because when we got in, we felt we couldn't be beat. And then we kind of had that in the back of our minds that we're capable of winning, and we're winners.
The team that got in 8th rolled through the playoffs, and the team that got in 3rd place, had their hands full. So to me, once you get into the playoffs, you just got to, I don't know if it was the losing streak that pulls it together. I think it's the group that spent time together that prepares for those moments. Playoffs is its own animal. You're playing one team. Every game is one game, and you can't let it have too much momentum. If you win a game, you can't get too high, and if you lose a game, you can't get too low. You got to reload, put the back in neutral, and get ready to go again. And I think this group, based on the experiences they've had, and I still go back, I think the strength of that team was their ability to defend. Everyone was committed to playing without the puck. We had a great goalie in net with Jonathan Quick, and we just believed over a 7-game series we could wear you out. And I think they proved that in 14.
Hope you enjoyed the excerpt of Channel 67 again. Sorry. Hope you enjoyed that excerpt of Channel... I hope you enjoyed that excerpt of Channel 67. That was just a small section of part 1 of our look back at the 2014 Cup-winning team. We spoke to Dustin Brown, Anze Kopitar, Justin Williams, Drew Doughty, Matt Green, Jarrett Stoll, Marion Gaborik, Kyle Clifford, Tyler Toffoli, Tanner Pearson, Alec Martinez, Daryl Sutter, John Stevens, Bill Ranford, Mike Fuda. I think I'm forgetting some names in there as well, so apologies to anybody I left off the list. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Chapter 2 will be out soon, and we'll focus on the Western Conference Finals against the Blackhawks and the Cup Final against the Rangers. For now, you can find Chapter 1 on the Channel 67 podcast. You can subscribe to that or find it at lakings.com/podcast or wherever you get your podcasts. If you use Apple Podcasts, we have created a channel there that will have all of the programs that are produced by the LA Kings listed on that channel. All right, with all that out of the way, it's time to crown a King of the Week and take a look ahead at the first 3 games on the upcoming road trip. All right, it's Monday. That means it's time to crown another King of the Week. Here to help me do it this week is Kasey Kazliner. Did I say that right, Kasey?
Yeah, you did.
Thank you. Kasey has been a relatively new face around Crypto.com arena, and part of the reason I like to do these segments is it gives me a chance to spread the ball around or spread the puck around. So Kasey, before we dive into this, why don't you tell the people what you've already told me in our various conversations about where you come from and who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. My name is Kasey. I'm originally from the Bay Area, but I go to USC.
Yeah, we won't hold that against you.
Yeah. So it's definitely an adjustment. I go to USC right now as a sophomore, and I basically cover the Kings on behalf of USC in the journalism school, basically trying to get more people kind of involved with hockey. Obviously, it's a sport that kind of goes under the radar sometimes, especially, when you have people at USC where they're all from different walks of life, and not everyone has had the exposure to the game. So I cover the Kings for USC, and I try to, take an analytical angle, not just do like relatively simple game stories, but kind of dive into the trends and whatnot, and cover the team as much as I can remotely and in person. So it's been really fun being at the arena this year, and it's I'm excited to go more for sure.
So what'd you say? You're a sophomore?
Correct.
Which means you're 20?
19.
Jesus Christ. Okay. So I don't know if you're familiar with the gag in Southern California, but there are a number of people for whom USC stands for the University of Spoiled Children.
Yeah.
I never grew up thinking that about USC. I had a bunch of friends go to USC. A bunch of people that currently work for the team went to USC. So whatever. But that's the reputation it has. And every now and then somebody will do something small or seemingly insignificant that stands out in my mind. And for me, I'm perfectly happy to have dinner with you and hang out with you before the games and chit chat on the elevator up and everything. But there was a USC football game a few weeks ago that you were attending, I believe, as a fan. And you left that game early to come to a Kings game in the first quarter of the season. I don't remember who the opponent was, but you certainly could have stayed at the football game and had yourself a good time. I don't know what your readership is at the Annenberg Media. What is it? The Annenberg Media Sports Desk? What do we call it?
Yeah, it's sorry. It's USC Annenberg Media is the website, and then we have like a student organization called Talk of Troy where we cover pro sports because the school won't do that themselves. So yes. And
no disrespect to the Talk of Troy, but I can't imagine Kings hockey is front page news at the Talk of Troy. But you left the game, you lived up to your commitments, you sacrificed personally for something that you didn't have to, and that impressed me and it caught my eye. And we were looking to fill out our roster here at King of the Week, and so I was really happy to have you join us. So I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
So that out of the way, let's get into the King of the Week. It's a weird week because there's only two games, two really good games, but two games where the scoring was sort of spread out and there wasn't much of it. Like Trevor Moore had 2 goals in the second game, but they're empty netters. So spoiler alert, he's not on my list.
Yeah, he's not on mine either.
Yeah, good for him and it's great, but they're empty netters. So I am another spoiler alert. I'm going to sort of tweak the rules when we get later into it, and I'll explain how later. But let's start with you. Who is your honorable mention this week?
Yeah, so my honorable mention is Mikey Anderson.
Okay.
I thought, the Kings this week really have solidified themselves as a top, and not just this week, but this season, as one of the best, if not the best, defensive teams in the league. Went 3 for 4 on the PK, which is around their season average. But when you're playing a team like, the Wild or the Stars, you need that to really, win those games. And they really stood their ground, especially, playing against or having Darcy Kemper return. His stubbornness alongside Gavrikov has really caught my eye this season. They have a lot of TOI for a reason. He also had a +2 rating this week, had an assist last game against Minnesota. That for me was enough to catch my eye. Maybe not too flashy on the spread on the score sheet, but I mean, their defense has been really hard nosed, haven't been allowed more than 2 goals since the San Jose game. So I'm giving it to Mikey.
I think that is a perfect entry this week on on King of the Week. I like it. That's good. I went a little more obvious, probably. I went with Anze Kopitar. Again, he's hitting another career milestone. It's 1,400 games. He had 2 assists. Actually, I also made notes. 2 assists, +3, 51% in the faceoff circle, which is not dominant, but it's better than 50%. And for me, it's really just he had a point in both games. He's, a former Selke winner. He's the captain. He's setting the tone. And listen, when a guy gets a milestone like that while also collecting 2 points, I think deserves recognition. So he's my honorable mention. Your runner-up then, Kasey.
My runner-up is David Riddick for his performance against Dallas. I know obviously it's a smaller sample size, only playing in one of the two games this week. But I think when you allow 2 goals in the first period and then you go and shut out the rest of the way against such a deep team like Dallas, even without Sagan, I think that's worthy of an award for that. He also, of course, conceded a penalty and had to, play on the PK against that and down the stretch as well and got the job done. And he was 26-28. I mean, yeah, I think for him, he's been clutch all year, especially having to, and that was coming off playing, however many games, over this past stretch with the where Portillo stepped in. And so I think for him, it's that high octane ability to step in and beat a team on any given night.
I like that you pointed out that he gave up the 2 goals in the first period against Dallas. I had forgotten that detail. But yeah, at the end of that first period, I think I told Russell it was okay for him to tell this story on his show. But I bumped into Russell Morgan in the media room in between the first and second period of the Dallas game. And I very sort of smugly was like, well, I saw this coming, right? Like, oh, okay, we, blah, blah, blah. And I was DMing him all night long. Every time the Kings would score a goal, make it 2-1. I was like, well, I guess I was wrong. And then to make it 2-2, I was like, wow, I was really wrong. And we took the lead. I was like, well, I'm just an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, I don't know that those 2 goals were Riddick's fault per se, but you're right. Shutting it down and then to do so in that late game push by Dallas. It was really, really impressive. That's a good call by you. I'm going to go, like I said, I'm breaking the rules here, so I'm going to have you do your King of the Week next.
Okay, yeah. I mean, to kind of lead into mine, I think I do agree, like, this is probably not a typical pick. And I think it's one of those weeks, like you said, where it's like, you have so many options.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to go Warren Fogle, though.
Okay.
Because obviously, like the most clear point is the game-winning goal against Dallas at a moment where LA was outshot 20-11. Obviously, the momentum had swung in LA's side, but it was not a true offensive game for him. It was a lot of grinders and depth players scoring. He also had an assist in that game. And against Minnesota, I mean, he didn't get on the stat sheet per se, like tangibly, but he had 5 shots. He was creating offense, and I even stuck him on that 4th line a couple times with Turcotte and Elenius, and I thought he was doing a good job down there. I think he had 0.2 expected goals on that line did, and it's not substantial, but for a 4th line, I think he had a solid contribution this week. And I think the game-winning goal against Dallas really solidified that for me.
It's a little bit of a shame that there were so many roster changes this week because Fogle would go in, I think, in that line of Deneau, Arvidsson, Edler, Fiala, Gavrikov. Like, Rob Blake has added players to this team over the last 3 years. 4 years, I guess, 4 years. And you can, every offseason, you can point to an acquisition or a trade deadline or whatever it is and go, yeah, they brought this guy from outside the organization. He came in. They clearly they're either targeting specific players that they know play a style they like, or they are trusting, because I think I heard, I can't remember if it was McClellan or Blake. We asked them one time if they were bringing in players to fit a specific system, and their answer was not necessarily. We're just bringing in, like, trust. They use that word trusting all the time. We're bringing in trusting NHL veterans, and they're doing exactly what they're doing. So Fogle's another one, right? He's come in, didn't start off great. Part of that was the line chemistry that they initially assumed would be clicking, didn't click right away. But yeah, he's come in and been everything he's been advertised as. And as I've said before, as a bald man, I'm very jealous of his head of hair. He's got a great head of hair. The reason I had you give your runner-up and King of the Week in a row is because this week, for me, the runner-up and the King of the Week is the goaltending.
Okay.
It's both of them. It's Riddick and Kemper because they each played one game. And, you're 100% right to say everything you said about Riddick, shutting down Dallas in the third period. I think an argument could be made pretty easily that Dallas outplayed the Kings for much of the game.
Yeah.
I don't want to go so far as to say Riddick stole it, although technically it might count as a steal in the newly created statistical category of steals. And then Darcy Kemper came in, and Kasey, can't remember if you and I have talked about the 1-goal shutout as a concept.
I don't think we have yet.
All right, well, good. Listeners will probably be tired of this, but I'll get to explain it to you. And the Minnesota game was a perfect example of this principle. The 1-goal shutout is a game where the goaltender, yes, technically allows 1 goal, but not really. Like, who cares, right? And in that game, they were up 2-0 for much of the for almost all of the third period, for much of the second period. And then they score an empty net goal to make it 3-0. And with less than a minute and a half left, Minnesota, after pressing, Minnesota was in their zone for, I don't know, 5 minutes or something. And they finally got one. Well, okay, fine. So what? They got one, big deal. And then the Kings turn around and score another empty netter right away. So again, like, doubly, who cares? And for Darcy Kuemper to come back after not having played in however many games it was, again, another difficult team. Minnesota was the number 1 team in the league. Yes, they played the night before. Yes, they had guys out of the lineup, but they're still Minnesota.
Yeah.
They were still pressing. They were still in their zone for as long as I could think of it. I mean, Darcy Kuemper made a couple, nice stops. And just for a week where the Kings go 2-0 and extend their winning streak from 3 games to 5 games, a 3-game win streak is nice, but there's something about making it 4 games and 5 games against 2 really difficult opponents, 2 opponents at the top of the Western Conference, one of whom, Dallas, has had your number for the last year or so, and one of whom in Minnesota is the top team in the league. All of a sudden, that 3-game win streak goes from, oh, okay, they finally got 3 in a row, to, no, they're the only team in the league currently with a 5-game winning streak. And I think that lies at the feet of the goaltender. So that's why I'm giving it to the goaltenders.
Yeah, that's an excellent pick. I agree. I think, like, at this point, especially seeing now Minnesota, the Kings 2-0 against them, and then Winnipeg faltering a little bit, in these recent games, it's really kind of just showing the parity of the league. And I mean, if they can ride this out, it's like at a certain point you're talking about, contending for the division with Vegas. And I mean, I think that conversation's already started, but I think, this week they've solidified their positioning a lot more, even though we're still early in the season.
Yeah, and it's funny. I don't know if you think this way or maybe it's just me. I don't know. But I look at the 2 wins against Minnesota, and it's not that they erased the 2 losses against the Sharks. No offense to your home team. But there is a little bit of like, a week ago I was saying, okay, well, there's 4 points out there that they should have had. And the fact that they lost to the Sharks twice is it's this or it's that or it's the other thing. But then when you consider that they've beaten Minnesota twice and they've beaten Winnipeg and they've beaten Vegas, and you sort of go, all right, well, for every point that they maybe should have had that they didn't, they have some points that maybe they shouldn't. And it happens to every team every year, right? Like, no team, you never go through the schedule and go, oh, well, you should beat this team and you should beat that. It's like Bill Simmons can go through the NFL schedule all he wants and predict who's going to beat who on what week at the start of the season. But it never works out that way. So, I'm definitely trending a little bit on the overly optimistic side, but I think it matters that you beat those teams. If you're going to lose to the Sharks twice, you got to go ahead and beat Minnesota twice or something like that. And they have.
Yeah. And I'd even throw in like the Buffalo game too, and maybe even the Calgary game as well. And I think it's interesting because, obviously every time, both times they've lost to the Sharks, it's the same, banter in the locker room or in the press conference. It's like, this is a good Sharks team, or, same can be said about Buffalo. Like, they might not have that record. But I think at the same time, like, I wonder about the authenticity of that statement, considering the Kings are playing their hardest clearly against these really good teams like the Jets and Wild. And makes me wonder about like underestimation of certain teams, like especially against Buffalo, where you get shut out and the only goal you allow is kind of a fluke. And so I don't know. I do agree though. I think it to a certain point cancels out, but I think obviously I think the team wants consistency. And they have it right now, past couple of weeks with, this win streak. But I think, now having Darcy back, the injuries to a certain level, with the exception of Lewis, are dying down a bit. You have Akil Thomas coming off IR. I think, that's where you can really settle in. And this team's depth has shined these past few games, and they're going to need that. And the 11-7's working. clearly. And
Well, I'm glad you brought it up. I was just going to say the irony of the depth shining is that it's the only 2 games of the season that they've gone to the 11-7. And Jim Hiller did it, I want to say 13 times last year, maybe 12. I don't remember exactly. I haven't double checked the stat. I heard they were, I heard somebody was saying they were 13-1-1 going 11 going 11-7. And that included the Dallas game, but not the Minnesota game. Last year, I assumed the 11-7 was partially because of limited cap space and partially because they simply were not in good standing with every member of their roster and they didn't want to play certain players. And that meant the 11-7. This year, that's not the case. Jim Hiller says he likes it. Jim Hiller says the players like it. I have no choice but to accept that Jim Hiller isn't lying about what he likes and what he doesn't like. I mean, there's no reason to say you like something if you don't, especially if you're the one who has control over doing it. I confess I don't necessarily understand it. I don't necessarily know why, if or why they would continue doing it for a long stretch of games. But I said something last night on King's Talk that I'm going to have to do some follow-up on because it just came to me off the top of my head. But I had said at some point, either on this show or King's Talk, that it may be time to accept that this year's team isn't as good as last year's team. And somebody was calling into King's Talk to sort of rub that in my face and say, do you still want to believe that or do you still want to say it? And the amendment to the statement I came up with is this year's team. I won't dive into better or worse because those are kind of meaningless terms. But I will say this about this year's Kings team. I think they are doing what they were intended to do more than last year's team. Last year's team was all about offensive depth. We're going to bring in Dubois. We're going to have 3 centers. We're going to have forward depth, scoring, this whole thing. And then it just never really came together. And then they had that losing streak where they fired their coach. This year, I don't remember hearing I guess the original idea was Fiala, Byfield, and Fogle, but that was abandoned pretty quickly. And the one thing that Jim Hiller has been consistent about, and the one thing that the team has been consistent in doing, is playing defense, right? They're number one with a bullet in shot suppression and not allowing shots on goal. And that's how they're winning games, and that's how they're built to win games. And they're, like I said, they are winning the way they were intended to win. And whether or not that can last all season, whether or not that will succeed in the playoffs. Hopefully they don't wind up playing the Edmonton Oilers again. Although at this point, I don't know, is Edmonton even in a playoff spot when we're recording this today?
I think they're the wild card.
Okay, so who knows? It's a long season, but it all. Unfortunately, that's what I said it all season last season. Unfortunately, we've reached a place with the team where the regular season kind of doesn't matter. It really matters what happens in the playoffs, and we have a few months to get there. So,
yeah, and I agree. I think if you're looking at this season versus last season, not to say that they didn't do this last season, but I think pivoting in strenuous situations has been a really focal point of their identity. You go to the 5-forward power play, doesn't work. You go back and immediately, you're seeing results right away.
Yep.
And same could be said. It's not like they, weren't operating well without the 11-7, but I agree. I think there's a certain point where, I think my understanding of it is, you don't want to have gridlock on the bottom lines. You want to be able to, put guys in like we saw last night, like I mentioned earlier with Fogle, kind of stepping in on the bottom line. Hellenius had, a couple good looks down there. And I think kind of shifting around more on the bottom lines is kind of what we've seen them do. And that's why, the depth has been stronger, I think, in the past couple of games. And that's kind of to your point. It's like there's a very big correlation between the 11-7 being reintroduced and then the depth just absolutely picking it up. And I think that's what they needed to do. You bring in a guy like Jeannot, who, was once a very highly touted player and kind of steps back a little bit in Tampa. And now, he's finding, maybe he's not, a guy to write home about every night, but he's, doing the job. He's laying it out there. He's getting in fights. He's, amping the team up. And I think the same could be said, in different ways for Fogle and Edmondson scoring goals. Like they really kind of captured that identity of pivoting, and it's working. Kind of, that's what I see.
And it's funny, when they brought in Jeannot and Edmondson, and I mean, Fogel's obviously not exactly a bruiser, but they brought in Jeannot and Edmondson, and there was a very clear focus on getting uncomfortable and, physicality and blah, 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 blah. I think I assumed, and I think a lot of other people assumed, that it would manifest itself in big hits or big fights or aggressive physicality as opposed to protective physicality. And what we're seeing in like the Minnesota game, I saw a ton of guys block shots. I saw a ton of guys breaking up passes. I saw a ton of guys using their body, whether it was stretching out on their belly to make a defensive play deep in the zone. It is now finally beginning to be consistently a style of play that I imagine is uncomfortable to play, even if it doesn't necessarily mean what I think we all assumed it meant when it was originally said.
Yeah, and I mean, I think their play at home too. I mean, I don't look too far into like the superstitions of that, and I think home ice is a real thing. But Jim Hiller was saying last night, obviously in the press conference, about how it's a different vibe when teams step into crypto, and the Kings, they've showed for it. Their home record, and it's been so interesting, like covering this team now, for the past 2 seasons, including this one. Going from such a good road team to going to such a good home team. And it's like the tale of two extremes, it feels like. And it's not like they're bad on the road this year, but at home, they're just, they've been very solid. And I think, enforcing themselves and having that confidence and defensively, like you said it perfectly, laying out. And last night, Gavrikov had some amazing blocks down the stretch I saw on the blue line. And, it really, I think it's really a big mental thing, I think, really right now. I mean, I think it's sort of stating the obvious, but I think for the Kings, it's like, to me, it's a very interesting phenomenon to see how they've really been able to capture themselves at home and really stay composed, especially starting the season on such a long road trip.
It's funny, I was looking up where they rank on blocked shots, and it's not that stunning, it's not that high. I mean, it's top 15. They're actually 15th. But it's more about timing, I think, which is the same as power plays, same as face-offs. It's not necessarily that you do it all the time. It's that you do it when you have to. But I was having a conversation with a member of the front office staff, and I got permission to share the conversation, but not necessarily identify who it was with. And I was asking about the 11-7, and I was saying, like, do you like it? And the answer was yes. They do. There's math apparently to support the idea that, who's going to help your team more? The guys at the top of your lineup or the guys at the bottom of your lineup? Well, it's the guys at the top of your lineup. So if you can find a way to get them out on the ice for a few more minutes, it's not, you're not giving an extra 5 to 10 minutes. You're giving like an extra 2 to 5. But that's going to help you. And then, you giving, more flexibility and more variety and whatever. And I said, well, okay, but what about the guys that don't like it? Because the guys who get more minutes probably do like it, but the guys who are sacrificing those minutes may not like it. Your 4 through 7 defensemen, maybe some of the guys down at the bottom of the lineup on the team who are having their, chemistry mucked up, whatever. And I said, what about, is there any fear at all in losing the room? Or in doing something that, the numbers say you should, but maybe isn't the wisest thing. And the example that was given was blocking a shot instead of maybe making a safe play, right? Like if you lay out to block a shot, maybe that's not the smartest play available to you. Maybe you could have stayed on your feet, used your stick, corralled the puck, made a safer play. But if you do lay out and block a shot, everybody on the bench goes crazy, right? The fans go crazy. The players love it. They bang their sticks. And all of a sudden it helps build that chemistry just a little bit. So it's not always necessarily doing what the numbers tell you ought to do, but sometimes it is, which is a very, talking out of both sides of my mouth kind of statement. But it was just really interesting. And this current little winning streak, I think, has given us an opportunity to learn a lot more about the team and the game, frankly, than the previous 5 games.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think to your point, like I what I appreciate about this team is the ability to like you said, make sacrifices and take risks. Like you said, like I saw last night, there were a couple of plays where they're laying out for shots and, getting those blocks, and immediately it turns into a transition. And I think this team, when they play off the transition, not necessarily having to operate under organic offense that maybe analytically is, more sound in certain situations. But I think really that's how we've seen them score a lot. It's off the rush, and sort of catching the defense off guard. And they have such highly skilled, fast skaters. I mean, Brant Clark his zone entries have been stellar lately. And obviously a guy like last night, like the barrier on the power play, this positioning, I think off sort of like the spontaneous rush has really been exciting to see. And like you said, I think it amps up the team a lot more when you're playing faster and you're playing quicker. And there's a lot of momentum that just injects itself into the bench.
Well, Kasey, I want to thank you for joining us. It's been a lot of fun having you in the media room and in the press box. If people do want to follow you, if Kings fans want to follow your work, obviously they can follow you on Twitter. Why don't you go ahead and give us your handle, and also let them know where they can read your analysis.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, to reach me, Twitter handles is literally my name, Kasey Kazliner.
With a Z, Instagram. Everybody, Kazliner.
Yeah.
And a K for Kasey.
Yeah.
Should be real clear about that. Double Ks.
Yeah, Kasey and then Kazliner, like you said.
Yeah.
Same as on Instagram. I also post some Kings content on there sometimes. And then to read my actual articles, USC Annenberg Media.com, and there's a tab for Talk of Troy, and under that tab you'll find all my Kings stuff, and we try to cover every single game, me and some other writers, but I've been, the main one in the room just because, this is kind of my thing. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great talking, and all season really, and last season as well.
Honestly, I'm always happy to have somebody new to the media pool who is committed to doing it. And like I said, a lot of people have their eyes on you. So you've shown well for yourself. Appreciate you coming on, and we will talk to you soon.
Appreciate it.
Ever wonder what top athletes eat to perform at their best? Superfood Direct, the preferred catering partner of the LA Kings, is here to fuel your game. For athletes, nutrition isn't just fuel, it's the key to peak performance. Superfood Direct delivers chef-prepared meals that help you build strength, boost endurance, and recover faster. With over 11 years of experience, every meal is balanced with the perfect mix of proteins, carbs, and healthy fats to power you on and off the ice. Ready to fuel your greatness? Visit superfd.com/direct and get 20% off your first order with promo code LA20. That's LA20. All right, time to take a look at the week ahead. Joining me now, Jack Jablonski. How are you doing today, Jack?
I'm good, Jesse. I'm recovered after Saturday's game, so we're good.
Yeah, right. So I have a question for you, and I think I know the answer, but I've brought it up a couple times now on Kings Talk. And the New Jersey Devils are a New York team, and I won't hear otherwise. That's the question.
So my mom's from North Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
and I will agree with you. She considers, she spent all of her life in New York, like worked in New York, would go back to New Jersey, lived in Hoboken, North Jersey, etc. So, very much New York through and through. And I would agree. Given like her takes throughout the years, like New Jersey Devils are packaged into the New York sports world.
I always had this thought, but this year I finally it's decided for me. This year I'm booking the road engineers for the audio broadcast.
Yeah.
Same guy. Right? I said one guy, 3 jobs.
That's about right.
Islanders, it's the Devils, and it's the Rangers. And the Devils are in between the Islanders and the Rangers on the schedule. So let's just get into it. Last year, a lot of people have already mentioned this to me. Last year, the Islanders game was the first crack in the armor, I suppose, that started the slide that resulted in Todd McClellan losing his job. Now, I personally would argue that the win against Columbus was the actual first sign, but nonetheless, go ahead. Sorry.
I personally blocked this part of the season out.
All right, fair enough.
With the trauma, but carry on.
But the team is taking a 5-game win streak into this road trip.
Yes.
And the first game up is the New York Islanders, who, in my mind, I don't know what they are, but I know they're not better than Winnipeg or Minnesota.
That's true. They're not. It's an interesting team because first and foremost, I think when you look at an identity, you specifically go to their general manager, and that's obviously Lou Lamoriello, who, for whatever it is, you go back to the New Jersey days and way past that, it's very just simple hockey. It's quote unquote a little boring, but their most entertaining, game breaking player is Matt Barzal, and he's injured. So that would even bring them further back to the pack in terms of keeping it simple, playing very simple hockey, less risk, less reward type of hockey. Now he's been out since the beginning of November. I think it was around a Halloween injury in Barzal. He's expected to come back this week, but I believe it's going to be after the Kings. So they'll, I guess, dodge the bullet on that end. But you're looking at an Islanders team who's 11-11-7. Their 7 overtime / shootout losses is the most in the NHL right now. But hey, you're picking up points, so they're keeping themselves in the race. They're actually currently tied with the Rangers, who we'll get to later in the week, for the last playoff spot in the Eastern Conference wild card. So, 29 points through with only 11 wins is something that you've got to be happy with if you're an Islanders fan. But the interesting thing is they're actually better on the road. So, the Kings, who have been off to a phenomenal start on the road, are being, or at least I lied. That was last year. But, they've been outstanding. Year, yeah, they're 500 on the road, and they go into a place where they're facing off against a team who's 5-6-2, and that is equal to 24th in point percentage among home teams. On top of that, they're actually a -10 goal differential at home. So really interesting. And, I hate to say it, but expect a low scoring game because the Islanders are 27th in goals for on home ice. But at the same time, they're also 27th in goals given up. So they average almost 3/4 of a goal more against than they score at home, which is 3.38 goals against. 5-on-5 hockey, again, low scoring numbers. Goals against, the Kings are 4th in 5-on-5. And then the Islanders are 7th. So don't expect fireworks, so to speak, on Tuesday. Now, you go to their goaltending situation, and Semyon Varlamov, who's kind of their 1B, he's injured out with the lower body injury, so we're not going to see him. Likely they'll see the starter in Ilya Sorokin. Now, Sorokin, they've got back-to-back wins coming into Tuesday's game with a defeat of the Carolina Hurricanes and then the Senators on Sunday, aka yesterday, if you're listening now. So that's kind of the guy you're going to have to point to. We know Sorokin can be a game breaker at times with how he's played in the past, but 8-7-4 on the year. And then from a skater aspect, a few people that popped up to me and kind of the areas that the Kings fans should look for is you got Captain Andersley, who's got 9 points in his last 6 games. He leads the team in scoring as well. So he's got 4 goals and 5 assists in the last half dozen. And then former Vancouver Canuck, Bo Horvat, with 4 points in his last 3 games. And the one area where they've dropped off is on the defensive scoring end. Noah Dobson had 70 points in 82 games last year. He's not on that pace right now. He's only got 15 points in 29 games. So he's obviously someone that the Islanders personally need to step up and kind of get back to his way. He's got a cannon of a shot if he unloads on it. I imagine we'll see that on their power play at some point. But an Islanders team that's just very basic, I guess you could say. But basic has won them some hockey games, and it's got them tied for the wild card spot right now.
I'm going to backtrack a little bit because you mentioned, get ready for a low scoring affair. That's the Kings' bread and butter right now. I mean,
yes.
It probably will be for the rest of the season.
Yep.
I was, as you were talking, I was trying to find a stat, and I think there's something wrong with the NHL website because
there is. Yeah, it's delayed like 4 days.
Yeah, the record is the same, but like the things are not updated.
All the stats are delayed, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking for empty net goals by the Kings, which is 6 against 5, and it has it listed as 1. And it's like, well, Trevor Lewis scored 2 by himself on Saturday, so I know it's not 1. But the point I was going to make was I don't know how many empty net goals the Kings have because, like I said, there's something wrong with the website. I'm willing to bet it's 3.
I think Kempe's got at least 2.
Well, Kempe, yeah. So it feels like a lot to me for this early in the season. Because Trevor Moore had 2 against Minnesota. I know Kempe has at least 1. I think you're right. Mikey Anderson had that one against Montreal. Was it Montreal?
Yeah, so that's a flawed stat on the books.
Yeah, so the point is it's more than none, a lot more than none, and empty net goals obviously occur when you keep it close because the other team pulls their goalies late in the game because they think they have a chance to get in it. The point is the Kings' goal differential I think is I want to say plus 10. Plus 12.
Correct.
But they're 16, 8, and 3, which means they've got 8 more wins than losses, which means they've scored more goals than their opponent 8 more times than blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, okay, well, how many of those plus 12 are empty netters? And it's like, well, 2 of them are Trevor Moore, 2 of them are Adrian Kempe, one of them is Mikey Anderson.
So we're very much closer to a even versus even when it comes to.
So that's Lou Lamoriello hockey. That's Jim Hiller hockey, which is just a nod to Jacques Lemaire hockey. It's not boring the way that I think that type of hockey is usually thought of. Like I was talking to somebody about this, and I don't know, maybe you can help me dig into this over the next month when the team's on the road. But like, I know that the team is good at shot suppression. I know that the team is number 1 with a bullet in not allowing shots on goal.
Correct.
But when I'm watching the game, I don't see a team that is preventing their opponent from having the puck in their zone, right? Like they have spent the last, 8 minutes trying to score, Dallas, that is, trying to score against the Kings. And then Minnesota spent the last 5 or 6 minutes trying to score. They did. It didn't matter because we had already scored an empty netter and then scored another one after that. So I don't know. I don't know how the Kings do it. I wish I did.
It's interesting because, you and me obviously sit next to my buddy Ryan Goldshire, who is an avid hockey fan, but never played the game, but still knows it very well. And it was an interesting observation when it comes to the Wild versus Kings game on Saturday. And the first, I'd say, half of the game, there was very little physicality, but a ton of tenacity and aggression. And to me, that's what I find when it comes to the answer of the low scoring aspect. It's because of the tenacity that the Kings bring on both ends of the ice. Now, from an offensive standpoint, the forecheck, the Trevor Moore type of player who just breaks things up. Trevor Moore is not, finishing guys and taking them out left and right like a Jacob Trouba does. But he's always in your face. He's, stick on stick, not giving you time. And to me, when they do that on the defensive end, whether it's our defensemen in the corners or our ability to be, fast and quick when it comes to defending, staying in front of, between you and your goal, when it comes to the, whoever you're covering, that to me is LA Kings hockey. And that's where the shot suppression comes from. Of the numbers are just down because the Kings don't allow you a lot of time wherever you are on the ice to be able to set up, get exactly what you want. For instance, you look at the penalty kill. It's go, go, go. Now, of course, there's structure to the go, go, go. Yeah, they're prone to some breakdowns, but the majority of the time, the LA Kings penalty kill is number 1 in, the least amount of time spent in their zone. That is all from causing the turnovers, causing the chaos, taking away your, freedom, your ability to be comfortable.
All right. So I think I found the empty net goal stat for the Kings.
Okay.
And again, this is just to demonstrate how many games they've been close enough late that the opponent pulled their goalie. Adrian Kempe has 4, Kopitar has 1, Lewis has 1, Fiala has 1, Moore has 3, Anderson has 1, Brandt Clark has 1. That's a lot. For a team with 16 wins, that's a lot of empty net goals.
How many empty nets is that? Can you add it up real quick?
So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
12 and 16 wins is a lot. Yeah.
To be fair, 2 of them happened in one game, and I think there might have been another game where I think it was the Montreal game where we had 2 empty netters. But either way, this team thrives on keeping it close. So if the Islanders want to play that way, and listen, 5 in a row, and to be clear, they're not going to win they're not going to go, whatever, 50 something and 0 over the remaining games. So then they take on the Islanders. Then in the middle of the week, they have the Devils, and the Devils are the one team of the 3 that they're playing in this week that actually have a better record than them.
Yeah, no, the Devils are right up there. They got 38 points. I think they're 2 off of the NHL lead. Now, again, better on the road. They're 7-5-2 at home, but one area that they do thrive at home is on the power play. They're 4th in the NHL at home on the power play, clicking at a 31 percentile success rate. Now, it's interesting because their leader in goals is Nico Hischier, their captain, but part of the reason that they're so successful is because he's 2nd in the NHL in penalties drawn at 17 penalties. Now, I'm going to give you a pop quiz. All Who leads the Kings in penalties drawn?
Even when you said pop quiz, I was like, shoot, he's going to be some question about penalties drawn?
Yes. Just skip to your
Byfield?
Skip down about 12 guesses and then guess. Like your
Tanner
first 12. Yes.
Okay.
Tanner Jeannot with 11, and then number 2 would be number 2 is Brant Clark. But neither here nor there. Just a fun, interesting fact. So, hey, Tanner Jeannot, fighter, goal scorer, penalty drawer.
Agitator.
Anyways, yes, agitator, very much. Back to the Devils.
Yeah.
Now, you'd obviously assume that Jesper Bratt or Jack Hughes would be the point leader. He is not. He is at 12th in the NHL with 35 points, while line mate Jesper Bratt is tied for 7th with 37 points. Both of them are 2 vital pieces on the power play. They each have 17 power play points already. And that's a huge uptick from last year, where I believe in 82-game season, Jack Hughes had about 31. So they're clicking at a much better rate, especially at the home. One of the reasons is their big difference maker on the defensive blue line, Dougie Hamilton. Now, we know he's an all-world NHL defenseman. He only played 20 games last year, which is a huge miss for their organization. He's played all 29 games this year. He's got 21 points, and he ranks top 10 in points among defensemen. So a huge piece to them. Obviously, a big shot, a great puck mover, and a very offensively talented guy who's bounced around a little bit, but that's where his home is now. And by all means, he's extremely valuable. And then the last thing here is they finally got their goaltender that they've been looking for over the last few years. And that was, of course, the trade with the Calgary Flames over the offseason, picking up Jacob Markstrom. He's been everything you could ask for. He's 2nd in the NHL with 13 wins, and he's got a 13-6-1 record. 251 goals against, which is a little high, but still in the top threshold of the NHL. And then a 907 save percentage. So a higher scoring team, which helps his numbers. But of course, we know that Markstrom can win a Vezina if he is up to his standards.
They have one thing going for them that I'm not going to pretend like I believe that this happens all the time, but when it does happen, you notice it, and so then you start thinking it happens all the time.
Yeah,
they're the team that went out and made additions last year, and everybody went, "Oh,
yep,
they're good."
This is the team."
And they weren't, and so you trick yourself and you go, "Oh, the additions didn't work. They don't know what they're doing, whatever." And then this year you go, "Oh no, Timo Meier."
It's all coming together.
Timo Meier to the Devils actually probably a good idea. Even though last season maybe not so much.
That's a great point. No, they got Andre Palat from the Lightning, and everyone thinks they're loading up, and it just did not work out. But like you said, this is a year where they are very firmly comfortable at the top of the league in a lot of different categories, but most importantly, the points category. And if it wasn't for the amazing run from the Washington Capitals, they would be a talked about team more. And we'll get to them next week, Jesse. But
yeah, listen, the Washington Capitals, there's every now and then something happens that makes me go, yeah, okay. I keep forgetting that none of us actually knows what we're talking about. And the Washington Capitals this year is that. It's like, all right, well.
Yeah, barely snuck into the playoffs
pick
last
can
year.
go on to be Tom Brady. And if the Washington Capitals can do what they're doing now, then yeah, none of us knows what we're talking about. All right. But we're going to keep pretending that we do know what we're talking about. And that brings us to the New York Rangers. And Jack,
What a week.
I was literally on the phone with my dad the other day, and he was asking me to explain the Trouba rumors to him. And
Okay.
I was like, honestly, I don't know. I have, I know that they're struggling. I know that they need to make cap space. I don't
thought you
really
said
know.
you knew. I thought you said we knew what we were talking about.
No, we do not. Nobody does. And as I was saying, I was like, you know what? Let me pull up an article or something and read something. And I pulled up my phone, and it was minutes after the trade went through.
Yep.
And so on the phone call, I was like, oh, well,
rumors no more.
Jacob Trouba is a Duck now. So what? I mean,
yeah, quite the busy week, right?
Yeah. And I thought Trouba was good, but I'm aware that New Yorkers did not think that at some point. And obviously, they felt they had to do something. The Rangers are a weird team to me because they're in New York, so they get pressed no matter what. And so I never really know if they're good or not.
They're good. I mean, you've seen what they've done in the last few years. They won the President's Trophy last year, if I'm correct, right? I believe so. Okay. Anyways, they're 14, 11, and 1. They have been on a huge skid as of late, but clearly there was something going on bigger in the locker room. And Trouba, who's been on the decline in the last year or two, I never understood why he was made the captain, but I'm also not Chris Drury, so it's not my choice. That said, they as bad of a skid as they've been on as of late, they're still in the playoffs. Again, tied with the Islanders for the last spot, but they're within 1 point or so of moving right up into the division rankings and in the top wild card spot. But again, the Kings go up against a team who's 500 at home, 7-6-1. And we'll get to the Trouba situation, but also the other big move that they made on Friday. And that stems from ranking 29th in goals against average at home. They averaged giving up over 3.5 goals a game at 3.57. Now, you'd expect that to not be the case because you've got Igor Shesterkin, who went into the year asking for a higher number than the number that he just signed at. Yep. He signs an 8-year deal at $92 million, which averages out to $11.5 million per year. That went down hours after the Trouba trade. So you move some money out, you sign some money and lock another guy down who was in the last year of his deal. So again, we know what Shesterkin can do. Now it's interesting because they trade Trouba on Friday, and they have 2 games. They've played 2 games since. They win 4-2 against Boston, and then they give up a touchdown at home to the Seattle Kraken on Sunday, aka yesterday. If you're listening to this on Monday, so interesting because I wouldn't call Trouba a very defensively sound player, but intriguing that they give up the big 7 spot 2 days after trading their captain. Now, you go back to Shesterkin, he's 9-9 on the year. His goals against average is 3, and he's got a .905 save percentage. So we know he's much better than those numbers. Who knows if it's on its way up now that Trouba's gone, or the team is trying to find their footing again. The other interesting part is, of course, you have to talk about Jonathan Quick. It would have been really interesting because he played in the game on Sunday against the Seattle Kraken when he gave up 6 goals plus an empty netter. He's at 398 career wins. I'm almost certain he would have gotten that start if he was at 399 and he had gotten the win on Sunday, because that would have been a really interesting storyline heading into it. Jonathan Quick, though, 5-2 on the year. He's got better numbers than Shesterkin so far, but obviously a much smaller sample size. On to the skaters. We start with Artemi Panarin. They're all world winger, of course, Russian. 34 points this year. He leads the team in goals with 15. He's got 19 assists. And in 5-on-5 play, he actually leads the NHL in rush chances. Now, we know the Kings are a very good team at limiting rush chances and odd man rushes when they're playing their game. I give this to Kings fans. If Artemi Panarin has had at least 2 rush chances, the Kings are not playing their game. because that's something they limit and don't allow teams to do. A surprise story in the positive factor would be a guy by the name of Will Cooley, who was a second-round pick in 2020. He had 21 points coming into this year in 85 NHL games. He's got 21 points this year in 26 games. So a guy who is quickly risen. Yeah, thank you. That's my USC communication degree showing off right there. Sorry, school. So yes, Cooley quickly rising up the ranks for the Rangers. Now, surprising in a negative factor, Chris Kreider.
I'm sorry, I have to point out that the Rangers drafted him with the pick traded to them by the Kings for Elias Anderson in 2020.
Okay, well, you shouldn't have brought that up. This is a Kings podcast.
I did.
Okay, back to Chris Kreider.
Yeah.
23 games played, 10 goals, 1 assist. Of course, probably the most talented, or at least the best net front player offensively in the last decade in the NHL. Not so much the case this year, at least not helping with the assists. Only 10 goals on the year. So a down year, but good for him. He got named to Team USA controversially for the Four Nations Cup. Now, the last person on this list that I want to bring up is Adam Fox, who, on the flip end of Chris Kreider, has 0 goals but 22 assists. So he's fourth in the NHL among defensemen in assists with those 22 apples. Yin and yang, I guess, for Kreider and Foxy. Mainly on the power play, I would assume. A few tip-ins here and there, or net front, bang it in after a shot from Adam Fox. But we know Fox is obviously one of the best defensemen in the NHL, former Norris Trophy winner. Definitely someone the Kings are going to have to pay attention to, both on the power play and on the 5-on-5 play. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is 2 little stats. The Rangers are the second best penalty kill team in the NHL at 85.5%, and the faceoff circle is going to be crucial in this game. The Kings are 9th in the NHL at 52 flat %, and the Rangers are 3rd in the NHL at 54-1. So control and possession off the draw is going to be huge for both of these teams' success.
Yeah, Kreider's a candidate for the Cy Young Award. That's a joke for people who are unaware. 10 goals, 1 assist, 10-1, then the baseball pitcher's record. Blah, blah. Yeah. I foolishly went to NHL.com to see who else might be on the.
That's the wrong website, Jesse Cohen.
NHL.com not up to date with their stats. So hopefully they'll get that sorted out soon. Jack Jablonski, thank you so much for the look ahead at the week. You know what I'm trying to say. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for joining me, and we'll talk to you soon.
Always.